What happens when a billionaire husband publicly disgraces his pregnant wife, accusing her of hiding a shameful past, only to wake up the next day and find her completely vanished, leaving behind nothing but bloodstains and unanswered questions that will haunt him forever? Welcome to Kaysmart Mythic Tales, where we bring you the most gripping African family dramas that will leave you breathless. Thank you for your incredible support. You are the reason we keep bringing these powerful stories to life. Before we dive into the story, kindly subscribe, drop a comment below, and tell us where you are watching from. Now let's get into this explosive story. The crystal chandelier trembled as Chukwuemeka Okafor's voice thundered through the marble corridors of the Okafor mansion in Victoria Island, Lagos. I can't stand you anymore, Adaeze. You hear me? I can't stand you. Adaeze Okafor froze at the top of the grand staircase, her 7 months pregnant belly prominent beneath her silk nightgown. Her hands instinctively cradled her unborn child as her husband's words echoed off the walls like gunshots. Downstairs in the opulent living room, the entire Okafor family had gathered for what was supposed to be a peaceful Sunday dinner. Chukwuemeka's mother, Chief Mrs. Ngozi Okafor, draped in expensive Ankara fabric and gold jewelry, stood with her arms crossed, her face carved from stone. His 3 sisters, Obiageli, Adana, and Ifeoma, watched with barely concealed satisfaction. Even the house staff had paused in the shadows, witnessing the public humiliation of the woman they once served with respect. You've brought nothing but shame to this family. Chukwuemeka continued, his designer suit jacket discarded on the Italian leather sofa, his silk tie loosened as if the very sight of his wife choked him. Look at you, swollen, emotional, always complaining. My mother warned me about women like you. Adaeze's hands trembled. Her dark skin had lost its glow over the past months of constant criticism and isolation. Her natural hair, once beautifully styled, was pulled back in a simple bun. She descended the stairs slowly, each step measured despite the tears streaming down her face. Chukwuemeka, please, she whispered, her voice breaking. Not in front of everyone. Can we talk privately? Privately. He laughed bitterly, the sound cruel and sharp. So you can manipulate me again? So you can cry and make me feel guilty for speaking the truth? Chief Mrs. Ngozi stepped forward, her expensive perfume announcing her presence before her words did. My son has finally opened his eyes. Adaeze. You trapped him with that pregnancy, but we all know the truth about where you came from. The words hung in the air like poison. Adaeze's breath caught. Her past, the thing she'd buried deep, the secret she'd hoped would never surface, suddenly felt dangerously close to exposure. Mama, what are you talking about? Adaeze managed, though her voice wavered. Obiageli, the eldest sister, smirked from her position near the marble fireplace. Oh, don't play innocent now. Did you really think we wouldn't investigate? That we just accept you into this family without knowing exactly who you are? Adaeze's heart hammered against her ribs. The baby kicked hard, as if sensing her distress. I have been a faithful wife, Adaeze said, forcing strength into her voice. I have honored this family, respected your traditions. Respected? Ifeoma interrupted, her voice dripping with disdain. Is that what you call lying about your background? About your family? Chukwuemeka moved closer to his wife, his handsome face twisted with disgust. I married you thinking you were from a decent family. A woman of virtue. But you're nothing but. Stop. Adaeze's voice rang out, surprising even herself. She straightened her spine, her hand protectively on her belly. Whatever you think you know about me, whatever lies you've been told, I have never betrayed you, Chukwuemeka. I have loved you faithfully. I am carrying your child. My child. Chukwuemeka's eyes blazed. How can I even be sure it's mine when you've hidden so much? The accusation struck Adaeze like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, gripping the stair railing for support. Chief Mrs. Ngozi's lips curved into a satisfied smile. Leave this house, Adaeze. Pack your things and go back to whatever gutter you crawled out of. The Okafors do not tolerate deceit. She's not going anywhere until we expose her completely, Adana added, pulling out her phone. I have documentation. Photographs. Evidence of exactly who Adaeze really is. Adaeze's world tilted. Through her tears, she looked at her husband, the man who had courted her with poetry and promises, who had sworn before God and their families to love her forever. Now he stood among his family like a stranger, his face hard and unforgiving. Please, she whispered one last time. Chukwuemeka, we are married. We made vows. Those vows were based on lies, he said coldly. You are nothing to me now. The room spun. The faces of the Okafor family blurred together. A wall of judgment, disgust, and cruel satisfaction. Adaeze felt the baby kick again, harder this time, and a sharp pain radiated through her abdomen. I need to sit down, she gasped. Sit? You want to sit in our house? Obiageli laughed. The audacity. Another pain, sharper now. Adaeze pressed her hand to her belly, feeling something warm and wet between her legs. When she looked down, her nightgown was stained with blood. Something's wrong, she managed to say before her knees buckled. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Chukwuemeka's face, not rushing to help her, but frozen in what looked almost like satisfaction. 6 months earlier. The morning sun painted Victoria Island in shades of gold and amber as Adaeze stood on the balcony of the Okafor mansion, her hands wrapped around a mug of ginger tea. She was newly pregnant, just 8 weeks, and the secret nestled inside her felt both precious and terrifying. Below, the streets of Lagos hummed with early morning activity. Okada riders weaved through traffic, street vendors set up their wares, and the distant sound of a church choir practicing gospel songs drifted on the breeze. Adaeze had grown up in Ajagunle, a stark contrast to this wealthy enclave, and sometimes the gulf between her past and present felt impossible to bridge. You're awake early. Adaeze turned to find Chukwuemeka emerging onto the balcony, his silk pajamas immaculate, his expression warm. This was the man she'd fallen in love with. Successful, charming, attentive. The managing director of Okafor Industries, worth billions. Yet he'd chosen her. I couldn't sleep, she admitted, smiling softly. Too much on my mind. He moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his hands resting where their child grew. Let me guess. You're worried about telling my family about the baby? Adaeze tensed. Chief Mrs. Ngozi had made her feelings about their marriage clear from the beginning. The wedding had been beautiful, held at the prestigious Cathedral Church of Christ in Lagos, with over 500 guests, but the Okafor family's smiles had been thin, their welcome conditional. Your mother still asks about my family every time I see her, Adaeze said quietly. Where they live, what they do, why they never visit. Because she's curious, Chukwuemeka said, kissing her neck. My mother can be intense. But once we give her a grandchild, everything will change. Trust me. But Adaeze wasn't sure. She'd told Chukwuemeka that her parents had passed away, that she had no siblings, that she'd been raised by her grandmother in a small village. It wasn't entirely a lie. Her grandmother had raised her for several years. But the truth was far more complicated, far more shameful by the standards of families like the Okafors. What if she investigates? Adaeze asked, voicing her deepest fear. Chukwuemeka turned her to face him, his dark eyes sincere. Investigate what? You're my wife. My family will accept that, and if they don't, it doesn't matter. I chose you, Adaeze. Not them. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. The moment shattered when Chukwuemeka's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. It's my mother. Family meeting this afternoon. About what? She didn't say. His jaw tightened. But lately, she's been asking questions about you. About us. Fear prickled down Adaeze's spine. What kind of questions? Nothing serious, he said quickly, but his eyes didn't quite meet hers. Just family business. You know how she is. But Adaeze did know. And that was precisely what terrified her. That afternoon, Adaeze stood outside Chief Mrs. Ngozi's private sitting room in the west wing of the mansion. The heavy mahogany door was closed, but voices leaked through, sharp, intense, conspiratorial. Cannot allow this to continue, Chukwuemeka. She is not one of us. Mama, I'm married to her. What exactly do you want me to do? Find out the truth about her. Where she really comes from. I have a friend, Detective Okoro, who specializes in background investigations. Very discreet. Adaeze's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. You want to investigate my wife? Chukwuemeka's voice carried disbelief. I want to protect this family, Chief Mrs. Ngozi replied coldly. Your father built this empire from nothing. We have a reputation to maintain, business deals that depend on our name remaining untarnished. If this girl is hiding something. She's not hiding anything. Then you have nothing to worry about, do you? Silence. Long, terrible silence. When Chukwuemeka finally spoke, his voice was quieter, uncertain. What if you find something? Then we will deal with it accordingly. Adaeze backed away from the door, her heart shattering. The man who had just promised her his unconditional support had just agreed to let his mother investigate her past. The secret she'd buried, the life she'd escaped, the shame she'd tried to outrun, it was all about to be dragged into the light. She returned to their bedroom and pulled out her phone with shaking hands. There was one person who might help, one connection to her past she'd maintained despite the risks. She dialed the number. Adaeze. The woman's voice was cautious, surprised. I didn't expect to hear from you. Sister Chioma, Adaeze whispered, using the title of respect for the older woman who'd once been her only friend. I need your help. They're investigating me. They're going to find out everything. Oh, child, Sister Chioma breathed. What have you done? I fell in love, Adaeze said, tears spilling down her cheeks. I thought I could leave it all behind. I thought if I was good enough, faithful enough, it wouldn't matter where I came from. The past always catches up. Adaeze. Always. Then what do I do? Sister Chioma was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with regret. You pray. And you prepare for war. Because if the Okafors discover the truth, they will destroy you. Adaeze sank onto the bed, her hand on her barely there belly, and wondered if bringing a child into this web of lies and judgment had been the greatest mistake of her life. Detective Okoro was a thin, precise man with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of patient smile that made people confess their darkest secrets. He sat in Chief Mrs. Ngozi's private study, a leather folder open before him, while the Okafor matriarch leaned forward in her chair with barely contained anticipation. 3 weeks had passed since the family meeting. Adaeze's pregnancy was now showing, her body changing in ways that made her feel vulnerable and exposed. Chukwuemeka had grown distant, his affection replaced by scrutiny. He watched her at dinner, questioned her phone calls, asked about her day with the tone of an interrogator rather than a husband. But she didn't know about Detective Okoro. Not yet. I have completed my investigation, Detective Okoro said, adjusting his glasses. What I found is quite remarkable. Tell me everything, Chief Mrs. Ngozi commanded, her jewelry glinting in the afternoon light. Adaeze's story about being raised by her grandmother is partially true. She did live in a rural village outside Enugu for several years. However, what she failed to mention is where she lived before that, and why she was sent away. Chief Mrs. Ngozi's eyes gleamed. Continue. Adaeze was born in Ajagunle, Lagos. Her mother Obioma was, he paused delicately, a commercial sex worker who operated near the port. Her father's identity was never confirmed. When Adaeze was 7 years old, her mother died of complications from HIV. The girl was sent to live with her grandmother in Enugu. The room was silent except for the ticking of an antique clock. A prostitute's daughter, Chief Mrs. Ngozi whispered, the words dripping with disgust and triumph. In my family. Married to my son. There's more, Detective Okoro said. When Adaeze was 16, she ran away from her grandmother's village. For 2 years, her whereabouts are unclear. But I have photographs, he slid several images across the desk, that place her in a bar in Onitsha. She appears to be working there, possibly in a similar capacity to her mother. The photograph showed a younger Adaeze in tight clothing, serving drinks to men in a dimly lit establishment. Her face was thinner, harder, her eyes already old despite her youth. She was a prostitute too, Chief Mrs. Ngozi concluded. I cannot confirm that definitively, Detective Okoro said carefully. But the establishment was known for additional services beyond serving alcohol. And after this? She disappeared again. Resurfaced 3 years ago with a church background. She'd been living in a church shelter in Lagos, working as a cleaner and singing in the choir. That's likely where she polished her image, learned to present herself as respectable. She's quite intelligent, from what I can determine. She reinvented herself completely. Chief Mrs. Ngozi sat back, her mind already calculating. Does my son know any of this? I doubt it. She's clearly been very careful about concealing her past. And the pregnancy? Detective Okoro hesitated. There's no evidence to suggest the child isn't your son's. However, given her history, he didn't need to finish the sentence. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Chief Mrs. Ngozi smiled, a cold, calculated expression. Thank you, Detective Okoro. Your discretion in this matter will be well compensated. After the detective left, Chief Mrs. Ngozi called a family meeting. Chukwuemeka arrived within the hour, confused by the urgency. Mama, what's this about? She slid the folder across the table. Open it. See the truth about the woman you married. Chukwuemeka's hands trembled as he read the report, studied the photographs. His face cycled through shock, disbelief, disgust, and finally, rage. She lied to me, he whispered. About everything. She trapped you, Chief Mrs. Ngozi corrected. She saw a wealthy, successful man and decided to secure her future. The pregnancy was probably planned from the beginning. I trusted her, Chukwuemeka said, his voice breaking. I defended her to all of you. His sisters, who had been lurking near the door, entered now. Obiageli picked up one of the photographs, studying it with malicious satisfaction. Little church girl wasn't so innocent after all, she said. Wait until our friends hear about this. No, Chief Mrs. Ngozi said sharply. We don't expose this publicly, yet. That would shame our family too. First we confront her. We make her confess. Then we decide how to remove her from our lives without damaging our reputation. But the baby, Chukwuemeka said weakly. DNA test the moment it's born, Chief Mrs. Ngozi replied. If it's yours, we'll take custody. If it's not. She shrugged. Then she has no claim to anything. Chukwuemeka stood, the folder clenched in his fist, his face a mask of betrayal and rage. I need to think. Don't think too long, his mother warned. Every day she stays in this house is another day she benefits from your naivety. That night, Chukwuemeka didn't come to bed. Adaeze found him in his study, drinking whiskey in the dark. Chukwuemeka? She approached cautiously. Are you all right? He looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw something in his eyes that terrified her. Not love. Not even anger. Calculation. I'm fine, he said, his voice hollow. Just thinking about the future. Our future? She asked hopefully, her hand on her belly. Sure, he said, turning back to his glass. Our future. But the way he said it made Adaeze's blood run cold. The confrontation came on a Sunday, as family confrontations often do in wealthy Nigerian households, after church, during what should have been a peaceful meal. Adaeze had dressed carefully that morning in a flowing mint green dress that accommodated her growing belly. She'd styled her hair, applied makeup to conceal the dark circles under her eyes from weeks of stress. She'd hoped that attending church together might soften Chukwuemeka's increasingly cold demeanor. Instead, he'd barely looked at her during the service. Now, at the mansion, the entire Okafor family had gathered in the formal dining room. The long table was set with china and crystal, but the atmosphere was anything but celebratory. Adaeze noticed immediately that something was wrong. The servants kept their eyes down, Chief Mrs. Ngozi wore a predatory smile, and Chukwuemeka's sisters exchanged knowing glances. Sit down, Adaeze, Chief Mrs. Ngozi said, gesturing to a chair that had been isolated at one end of the table, facing the rest of the family like a defendant before judges. What's going on? Adaeze asked, her voice trembling. We're having a family discussion, Chukwuemeka said coldly. He stood at the opposite end of the table, the detective's folder in his hands. About truth. About lies. About who you really are. Adaeze's heart stopped. Chukwuemeka, please. Please. His voice exploded through the room. You want to say, please to me? After everything you've hidden? He threw the folder down the table. It skidded to a stop in front of Adaeze, photographs spilling out like accusations. She recognized herself in the images. Younger, desperate, wearing clothes she'd tried to forget. Her hands shook as she gathered them, bile rising in her throat. Where did you get these? She whispered. Does it matter? Chief Mrs. Ngozi asked. What matters is the truth. You're the daughter of a prostitute. You worked in a bar, probably selling more than drinks. You lied about everything to trap my son into marriage. That's not true. Adaeze stood, her chair scraping against the marble floor. I never trapped anyone. I fell in love. Love. Ifeoma laughed harshly. Is that what you call calculated seduction? You saw a rich man and decided to secure your meal ticket. Tears streamed down Adeeze's face, but she forced herself to stand tall. Yes, I came from Ajagunal. Yes, my mother was a sex worker. Yes, I worked in a bar because I was 16 and had nowhere else to go. But I never prostituted myself. I cleaned, I served drinks, and the moment I could escape, I did. I found the church, I found God, I changed my life. By lying about it, Chukwuemeka interrupted. By pretending to be someone you're not. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything because I knew, her voice broke. I knew you would look at me exactly the way you're looking at me now. Like I'm dirty. Like I'm worthless. You are worthless, Obiageli said flatly. You're the daughter of a whore, probably a whore yourself, and now you've contaminated our family bloodline. Adeeze's hand flew to her belly protectively. Don't you dare talk about my child. Your child. Chukwuemeka moved closer, his face twisted with rage and pain. How do I even know it's mine? You've lied about everything else. The accusation hit her like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, gripping the table for support. I have been faithful to you, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. From the moment we met, I have loved only you. This baby is yours. Chukwuemeka. How can you doubt that? Because everything about you is a lie, he shouted. The innocent church girl act, the modest background, the family you claim to have lost, all lies. Why would your fidelity be any different? Chief Mrs. Ngozi stood, her expensive jewelry catching the light. You have two choices. Adeeze. Leave now, voluntarily, and we'll provide a small settlement to help you restart your miserable life. Or stay, and we'll make your past public. We'll tell everyone, our business associates, our friends, the media, exactly who you are. We'll destroy whatever reputation you've built. You would ruin your own grandchild's future just to punish me? Adeeze asked in disbelief. We'll take custody of the child after it's born, Chief Mrs. Ngozi replied. DNA test first, of course. If it's Chukwuemeka's, we'll raise it properly, away from your corrupting influence. If it's not. She shrugged. Then you have nothing. Adeeze looked at Chukwuemeka, desperately searching for any sign of the man who had loved her. You would let them do this? Take our baby. His jaw clenched, and for a moment, she saw conflict in his eyes. But then his mother's hand touched his shoulder, and his face hardened again. You should have thought about that before you deceived me, he said. The room spun. Adeeze gripped the table, her breath coming in short gasps. She felt the baby kick, strong, insistent, as if reminding her that she had to fight. I will not leave my child, she said, her voice gaining strength. I will not let you shame me into abandoning my own baby. Whatever you think of me, whatever my past was, I am still your wife. I am still pregnant with your child. And I will not be thrown away like garbage. Adana pulled out her phone. Then let's start the exposure now. I'll post these photos on social media, tag all our family friends. Do it, Adaeze said, surprising everyone including herself. Post them. Tell everyone. Let them judge me. But I know the truth. I have done nothing wrong since marrying your brother. I have been a faithful wife. And if that's not enough for this family, then this family is not what I thought it was. The boldness of her statement seemed to shock them all into silence. Then Chukwuemeka spoke, his voice low and dangerous. You want to play this game? Fine. But understand this. I will make your life hell. I will use every resource, every connection, every ounce of power this family has to break you. By the time I'm done, you'll wish you'd taken the settlement. The threat hung in the air, cold and absolute. Adaeze felt something inside her break. Not her spirit, but her illusions. The man she'd loved was gone, if he'd ever existed at all. In his place stood a stranger who would use her poverty, her past, her vulnerability as weapons against her. Then I guess we're at war, she whispered. She turned and walked out of the dining room, her back straight despite the tears streaming down her face, leaving the Okafor family in stunned silence. She didn't know that this was only the beginning. She didn't know that within 2 weeks, Chukwuemeka's rage would escalate into something even more destructive. She didn't know that the public humiliation in the grand foyer would end with her collapse, bleeding, possibly losing everything including her baby. But she was about to find out. Adaeze woke in the hospital to blinding white lights and the steady beep of machines. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was or why her body felt so heavy, so wrong. Then the pain registered, a deep, aching emptiness in her abdomen, and the memories flooded back. The confrontation. The blood. The collapse. Her hand flew to her belly, and she knew immediately. The small, firm roundness was gone. Her stomach felt hollow, deflated. "No," she whispered, then louder. "No, no, no." A nurse rushed in, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a name tag that read, Nurse Amaka. "Mrs. Okafor, please, you need to stay calm." "My baby," Adaeze sobbed, trying to sit up despite the 4 lines and monitoring wires. "Where is my baby?" Nurse Amaka's expression shifted to deep sympathy. "I'm so sorry. You had a placental abruption. The trauma from your fall caused," she paused, choosing her words carefully. "The pregnancy couldn't be saved. You delivered at 28 weeks, but the baby didn't survive. I'm so sorry." The scream that tore from Adaeze's throat was inhuman, primal, the sound of a mother's soul shattering. Nurses rushed in to sedate her, but she fought them, clawing at the sheets, trying to get up, to find her baby, to rewind time and undo the horror. "Where is my husband?" she managed between sobs. "Where is Chukwuemeka?" Nurse Amaka exchanged glances with another nurse. "He hasn't been here, Ma. Your mother-in-law came yesterday, spoke with the doctors about the paperwork and arrangements. But she said the family needed time to process the loss." The loss. They'd already processed her baby as a loss, an inconvenience to be handled with paperwork. Adaeze stopped fighting. The sedatives were taking hold, but more than that, something inside her had simply broken. Or perhaps, finally hardened into something unbreakable. "How long have I been here?" she asked quietly. 3 days. You've been in and out of consciousness. 3 days, and her husband hadn't come. 3 days, and the Okafor family had reduced her baby, her child, to paperwork and arrangements. As the sedatives pulled her under, Adaeze made a decision. When she woke up, she would disappear. She would take nothing from the Okafors, ask for nothing, expect nothing. She would simply cease to exist in their world. And then she would rebuild. Adaeze was discharged 5 days later with pain medication, grief counseling pamphlets she would never use, and the clothes she'd been wearing when she collapsed. Now cleaned but still carrying the ghost of bloodstains. Chukwuemeka sent a driver to collect her, but not himself. The driver handed her an envelope. Inside was a check for 2 million naira and a brief note. "Consider this a settlement. Sign the divorce papers. Leave quietly. Don't contact this family again. No condolences. No acknowledgement of their lost child. Just money and a dismissal." Adaeze tore the check into pieces and let them flutter to the hospital parking lot like confetti of her old life. The driver looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "Take me to Yaba," she told him. "Yaba?" He seemed surprised. Yaba was a working-class neighborhood, nowhere near Victoria Island's luxury. "You heard me." Sister Chioma's small apartment above a fabric store was exactly as Adaeze remembered. Crowded, warm, smelling of coconut oil and incense. The older woman opened the door, took one look at Adaeze's hollow eyes and gaunt face, and pulled her inside without questions. "I knew you'd come," Sister Chioma said simply. That night, lying on a thin mattress in Sister Chioma's spare room, Adaeze finally allowed herself to grieve properly. She cried for her baby. A son, the doctors had told her, though she hadn't asked. She cried for the marriage she'd believed in. She cried for the naive girl who had thought love could conquer shame and poverty. When the tears finally stopped, she felt empty but somehow clearer. "I need to leave Lagos," she told Sister Chioma the next morning. "I need to disappear completely." Sister Chioma studied her over a cup of bitter coffee. "Where will you go?" "I don't know. Somewhere they'll never think to look. Somewhere I can start over." "You want revenge," Sister Chioma observed. "No," Adaeze said and was surprised to find it was true. "I want justice." "There's a difference." Sister Chioma nodded slowly. "I may know someone who can help. But Adaeze, if you do this, if you truly disappear, there's no going back. You'll be cutting every tie, burning every bridge. I have no bridges left to burn, Adaeze replied. The Okafors made sure of that. 2 weeks later, Adaeze boarded a bus to Abuja with a new phone, a different hairstyle, and a borrowed name. She'd left her wedding ring on Sister Chioma's table. She'd signed the divorce papers using a fake address. She'd erased every trace of Adaeze Okafor. The woman who stepped off that bus in Nigeria's capital city was someone new. Harder, smarter, with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. She found work at a small NGO that provided legal aid to women in domestic violence situations. The irony wasn't lost on her. She rented a tiny room in a shared apartment in Zone 4, shopped at local markets where no one knew her face, and slowly, carefully, began to rebuild. But she also began to research. She learned about business law, about property rights, about the ways wealthy families like the Okafors protected their empires. She studied their companies, their investments, their vulnerabilities. Not for revenge, she told herself. For understanding. For power. 6 months after her disappearance, Adaeze, now going by her middle name, Chinelo, had transformed again. She'd enrolled in evening law classes at the University of Abuja. She'd networked with activists, lawyers, and journalists who specialized in exposing corruption and family exploitation. And then one evening, she saw the news. Okafor Industries was being investigated for fraud. Millions of naira had been embezzled, workers' pensions had disappeared, and the company faced potential collapse. Chukwuemeka's face filled the screen, older, tired, the arrogance replaced by barely concealed panic. Adaeze felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just a cold, clear certainty. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she'd saved months ago. A journalist from Premium Times who had been investigating corporate fraud. This is Chinelo Adaebe, she said. I have information about Okafor Industries. And I have evidence that will bring the whole family down. On the other end of the line, the journalist's voice sharpened with interest. Tell me everything. Adaeze smiled for the first time in months. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had been broken, rebuilt herself, and learned that sometimes the best revenge was simply the truth. Let me start from the beginning, she said. Let me tell you about the Okafor family, and exactly how they destroy anyone who doesn't fit their perfect image. The Premium Times exposé hit Lagos like a thunderstorm. Okafor Industries, empire built on exploitation, screamed the headline, accompanied by detailed documentation of embezzlement, worker exploitation, and, most damaging of all, a sidebar story titled, The Woman They Erased, How One Family's Shame Ended in Tragedy. Adaeze, Chinelo now, watched from her small apartment in Abuja as her story went viral. The journalist, Tun Bakare, had protected her identity, referring to her only as a former family member who wished to remain anonymous. But the details were damning. The investigation into her background, the public humiliation, the collapse, the lost baby, the abandonment. Within hours, social media erupted. #Justice for the Okafor wife trended nationwide. Women's rights organizations demanded investigations. Churches that had once celebrated the Okafor family's philanthropy now distanced themselves. Adaeze's phone buzzed. Sister Chioma. Child, are you watching the news? I am. Are you safe? If they discover you're alive, if they find out you're the source. I'm safe, Adaeze said calmly. And I'm ready for whatever comes next. What came next was chaos in Victoria Island. Chief Mrs. Ngozi Okafor sat in her private study, surrounded by lawyers, crisis management consultants, and her 3 increasingly panicked daughters. The family's carefully constructed reputation was disintegrating by the hour. We need to issue a statement, one lawyer insisted. Deny everything. Deny what? Obiageli shrieked, waving her phone. It's all true. Mother, you had that girl investigated. You have the detective's files. If anyone subpoenas them. No one will subpoena anything, Chief Mrs. Ngozi said, but her voice lacked its usual authority. She looked older suddenly, the weight of her actions settling into the lines of her face. Where is Chukwuemeka? Ifeoma asked. They all fell silent. Chukwuemeka had locked himself in his wing of the mansion, refusing visitors, refusing calls. The embezzlement investigation had already been crushing him. He'd been managing director when the fraud occurred, and even though he claimed ignorance, his signature was on documents. Now, with the story of Adaeze's treatment public, he'd become a villain overnight. The Golden Son, reduced to a monster who let his pregnant wife collapse and disappear. "We need to find that girl," Chief Mrs. Ngozi said finally. "Adaeze. We need to bring her back, publicly apologize." "She's probably dead," Adana said bluntly. "You saw the report. She was discharged with nothing, no support, 7 months pregnant and traumatized. She probably died somewhere, alone." "Don't say that." The voice came from the doorway. Chukwuemeka stood there, and the family barely recognized him. He'd lost weight, his expensive clothes hanging loose. His eyes were haunted, red-rimmed. "She's not dead," he said hoarsely. "She can't be dead. Why do you care?" Obiageli snapped. "You're the one who threw her out." "I was angry," Chukwuemeka shouted. "I was hurt, I felt betrayed, but his voice broke. "I never wanted her to die. I never wanted to lose my child. I just wanted—" "I don't know what I wanted." Chief Mrs. Ngozi stood. "This sentimentality is useless now. The damage is done. Our focus must be on salvaging." "Salvaging what, Mama?" Chukwuemeka asked bitterly. "Our reputation? Our business? What about salvaging our souls? What about acknowledging that we destroyed an innocent woman because she didn't come from the right background?" "She lied. She survived." Chukwuemeka's voice thundered through the study. "She survived poverty, abandonment, shame, and remade herself into someone good, someone worthy. And we punished her for it. We punished her for not being born into privilege like us." The truth of his words hung in the air, undeniable. "If she's alive," he said quietly, "I will find her. And I will beg for her forgiveness, even though I don't deserve it." 3 months later, Adaeze, still living as Chinelo, sat in a conference room at the Nigerian Bar Association, having just passed her law certification exams. She'd accelerated her studies, driven by purpose. Around her, fellow graduates celebrated, but she felt only a quiet satisfaction. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello. Chinelo Adaebe?" The voice was male, professional. "My name is Emeka Okonkwo. I'm an attorney representing Chukwuemeka Okafor. He's been trying to locate someone, his ex-wife, Adaeze Okafor. We have reason to believe you might know her whereabouts." Adaeze's hand tightened on the phone. "Why would I know that?" "Your testimony to Premium Times, your work with domestic violence survivors, your timing in Abuja. It all suggests you're more connected to this case than you've admitted. Mr. Okafor isn't seeking legal action. He wants to apologize. To make amends." "Amends?" Adaeze repeated hollowly. "Is that what you call it when you destroy someone's life?" A pause. "So you are Adaeze." She closed her eyes. "I was Adaeze Okafor. That woman is dead. She died in a hospital bed in Lagos when no one came for her." "Please," the lawyer said, and she heard genuine emotion now. "Chukwuemeka has been living with guilt that's eating him alive. The family is in ruins, the business is collapsing, his mother has had a stroke, his sisters are facing their own reckonings. He doesn't want to burden you, but he needs to know if you're alive. If you're okay." "Am I okay?" Adaeze laughed, the sound sharp. "I lost my baby. I lost everything. But I survived, and I built a new life from nothing. So yes, I'm okay. And you can tell Chukwuemeka Okafor that his guilt is his own to carry." She hung up. But that night, alone in her room, she cried for the first time in months. Not for what she'd lost, but for what could have been if love had been stronger than shame, if acceptance had been stronger than judgment. The final confrontation came unexpectedly, at a women's rights conference in Lagos 6 months later. Adaeze, now fully Chinelo, a rising advocate for domestic abuse survivors, was giving a keynote speech about resilience and rebuilding. In the audience, hidden in the back row, sat Chukwuemeka. She saw him as she spoke about women who'd been judged for their pasts, who'd been deemed unworthy because they didn't fit perfect molds. Their eyes met across the crowded auditorium, and she saw the recognition, the shock, and beneath it all, the devastating remorse. After her speech, she found him waiting outside the conference hall. He looked broken, his designer clothes replaced by simple attire, his arrogance completely gone. "Adaeze," he whispered. "That's not my name anymore." "I know. I'm sorry." For everything. For all of it. Tears streamed down his face. I was weak. I let my family's prejudices poison me. I convinced myself you betrayed me when the only betrayal was mine. Of you, of our child, of everything we could have been. You're right, she said simply. And I've forgiven you. He looked up, hope flashing in his eyes. But, she continued, forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It means I've made peace with what happened. It means I've let go of the anger so I can move forward. It doesn't mean you get me back. I don't deserve you back, he said. I know that. I just needed you to know. The baby, our son, I had him buried properly. With a name. Chibuzo. God leads. I visit his grave every week. I tell him about his mother, about how brave she was, how strong. Adaeze's breath caught. She hadn't known there was a grave. She tried not to think about it. Where? She asked quietly. Ikoyi Cemetery. Section D, Plot 47. She nodded, memorizing it. The family business is gone, Chukwuemeka continued. We're bankrupt. My mother is in a nursing home, partially paralyzed from her stroke. My sisters are working regular jobs for the first time in their lives. We lost everything, and that's the justice you deserved. I didn't want revenge, Adaeze said. I wanted accountability. There's a difference. I understand that now. He pulled out an envelope. This is the deed to a property. A small building in Yaba. It was part of my personal holdings, not the company's, so it survived the bankruptcy. I want you to have it. Use it for your organization, for helping women like you. It's not enough, it will never be enough, but it's all I have left to give. Adaeze took the envelope, not out of need but out of recognition that this was his attempt at redemption. I hope you find peace, she said finally. Real peace, not the kind that comes from money or status, but the kind that comes from being a better person. I'm trying, he said. Every day I'm trying. She nodded and turned to walk away. Chinello, he called after her, using her new name with respect. Our son. He would have been proud of you. Of who you've become. She didn't turn around, but she let the words settle over her like a blessing. 2 years later, Adaeze, Chinello, stood in front of the building Chukwuemeka had given her, now transformed into a shelter and legal center for women escaping domestic violence and family rejection. The sign read, Chibuzo House, where God leads to new beginnings. Sister Chioma stood beside her, along with 24 women whose lives had been changed by the center. You did it, Sister Chioma said softly. You turned your pain into purpose. Adaeze smiled, thinking of her son, of the life she'd lost and the life she'd built from its ashes. We all did, she replied. Every woman who walks through these doors and chooses to rebuild, that's the real redemption. Not mine. Ours. She looked up at the Lagos sky, at the city that had both broken and remade her, and for the first time since that horrible night in the Okafor mansion, she felt something she'd thought lost forever. Hope. The story of Adaeze's transformation became legend in women's rights circles across Nigeria. Chukwuemeka eventually remarried, this time to a woman from a modest background, and by all accounts, he'd learned his lessons. He worked as a consultant now, living simply, and he visited his son's grave every week without fail. Chief Mrs. Ngozi died 2 years after her stroke, her final words reportedly an apology to a daughter-in-law she'd never see again. And Adaeze? She never remarried. She poured her love into Chibuzo House, into the hundreds of women who passed through its doors, and into the memory of a son who had lived only briefly but whose legacy of change lived on forever. She learned that redemption isn't about returning to who you were, but about becoming who you were always meant to be. And she learned that sometimes, the greatest revenge is simply refusing to be destroyed. Thank you for watching this emotional journey. What did you learn from Adaeze's story? Comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear this message of resilience and hope. What story should we tell next? The end.